1 year ago, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee showed the world how low they would go, how dirty they would play in order to derail the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Well, of course, despite their best efforts, Kavanaugh was confirmed. But now radical Democrats and their friends in the media are picking up where they left off.
So the sexual misconduct allegations against Supreme Justice Brett Kavanaugh back in the spotlight.
A new book on Kavanaugh by two New York Times journalists mentions a previously unreported claim.
A book detailing a new allegation of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh.
Serious questions are being raised about the FBI investigation into Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Were earlier investigations mishandled?
This new smash and smear campaign involves charges advanced, might have heard about it by these two New York Times reporters, in order to sell a book about the Kavanaugh fight. Now, the lewd accusations, they threw them out with no evidence or even a victim. They were quickly smacked down by real journalists. Well, that should have ended this entire shameful saga, but it didn't. The authors are defending their vile articles since it's now become politically useful to Democrats. But their big bombshell is imploding. You see, the Times editors didn't want to include the victim's name, so they admitted a key detail that undermines the entire allegation. This supposed victim has no memory of this ever happening. Didn't give an interview. Well, now the reporters' excuses are rolling in.
We had her name, and you know, the Times doesn't usually include the name of the victim. And so I think in this case, the editors felt like maybe it was probably better to remove it.
Did you read it right before it went to print?
You know, we thought we had.
They thought they had. A new story here also. Well, they were wrong. But don't worry about the slanderous charge, the damage done. You people are making too much of this.
It's 2 paragraphs in a almost 300-page book. We did not make a lot of this. The world is making a lot of this. We just put out every fact that we could find that hadn't been reported previously.
But the Times reporters, in an excerpt used to hype their book, omitted this key fact. What is it? That Christine Blasey Ford's friend, Leland Kaiser, now doubts Blasey Ford's claim that Kavanaugh ever sexually assaulted her. And that's not all. Kaiser also told the authors she felt pressured by Ford's friends, including a former FBI agent, to change her story. Otherwise, though, they'd publicize her past problems with drugs and alcohol. Can you imagine this? Now, we'd seen this type of smash and smear job before, when the deep state employed similarly sleazy tactics and uncorroborated allegations, of course, against President Trump. All the while, media lapdogs reporting it all without a hint of skepticism. And when it all turned out to be hogwash, talking about the dossier, etc., the left just moved on. Nothing to see here. But even after all the backtracking and the corrections, Democrats are still using this fake news for political gain.
Yeah, George, the calls for Kavanaugh to go are now growing. This morning, at least 6 of the Democratic presidential candidates say Kavanaugh should be removed from the bench.
What's become clear is that he should be impeached. The House absolutely has the ability to impeach him.
I think that he has disqualified himself for service on the Supreme Court, and he should step down or he should be impeached.
Speaking of people who disqualified himself, what is he at, 0% now? Predictably, St. AOC has returned her own verdict, also calling for Kavanaugh's impeachment. And her provocateur protege, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, followed up with a resolution in the House today, which, of course, Kamala Harris seemed to almost take as her cue to act. Kamala is pursuing House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler to investigate and, yes, impeach Kavanaugh. Now, if they don't act, Senator Harris wants to turn it into the next Mueller probe.
The process by which he was confirmed has created a crisis of confidence in that court. If the United States Congress doesn't act, well, then let's appoint an outside counsel, somebody who is neutral, who can review the evidence in this case, determine the credibility of the witnesses. We have to pursue justice.
Hear that thud? That's the sound of Kamala falling off her high horse, okay? Pursuing justice is the last thing they're interested in. That's nearly impossible 3 decades after any alleged wrongdoing, especially one with, invisible victims. And the Democrats know it. That's what's so sick about all of this. Where Trump is on the campaign trail selling peace and prosperity, Democrats are sowing chaos and calamity. What they're doing to Kavanaugh right now is a classic leftist smear operation. Throw out charges all over the top, inject them into the media ecosystem, where compliant journalists will eagerly spread the fake news. The charges are so outrageous, so lurid, that they're beneath response. But the press, possessed with anti-Trump hatred, endlessly regurgitates them over and over, hoping to inflict maximum damage. And remember, they're doing all of this while controlling only one house of Congress. I'm here tonight to tell you, imagine what they'll do if they win the White House again. Give them the presidency or the Senate, and they'll use the power of government to do to us what they're doing to Brett Kavanaugh. They'll demonize opposing voices and work to silence them or intimidate them. But I have to believe that fair-minded Americans, anyone who has a son or a brother going off to college or is in the workplace, will see this new Kavanaugh smear for what it is: a sad, revealing, and desperate commentary on the current state of the Democrat Party and the press that long ago stopped calling balls and strikes. And that's the angle.